You want to know why most people don't win, why they keep spinning their wheels and never make real traction. It's simple. They're loud in distraction, loud in opinions, loud in talking about dreams they never commit to. But let me tell you something powerful. If you want to build something extraordinary, you must learn two skills: focus yourself and stay silent. See, focus is not just about removing distractions. Focus is about deciding every single day what matters most. Most people give their time to what's urgent instead of what's important. But champions, winners, they operate with precision. They've got a target, and they don't just aim at it. They eliminate everything that isn't it. Now let's talk about silence. Silence is not weakness. Silence is power under control. The lion doesn't roar when it hunts. The sniper doesn't shout before he pulls the trigger. The wealthy don't broadcast the grind. They execute in silence and let the results speak. You're busy trying to prove yourself to people who aren't even in your destiny. You're trying to convince people who don't pay your bills or build your dreams. Let it go. When you focus yourself, you eliminate noise. When you stay silent, you build strength. Let your fruit talk. Let your wins talk. Let your life talk. This is the season where you shut the world out and level yourself up. Silence is your sanctuary. Focus is your fuel. And together they form a force that no distraction, no doubt, and no devil can stop. So here's my challenge to you. Be so focused they think you disappeared. Be so silent they don't see it coming. Then show up with results they can't ignore. When we talk about achieving greatness, when we talk about unlocking the potential that's already inside of you, we have to start with something simple, but profound. Clarity is power. Most people don't fail because they lack talent. Most people don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they never made a firm decision about where they're going. They wake up and drift through life like a leaf in the wind, going wherever the breeze of circumstance or someone else's agenda blows them. But that's not how destiny is fulfilled. That's not how legacies are built. When you have clarity, you have a target. And when you have a target, you have a reason to say no to everything that doesn't take you there. Let me say this clearly: clarity is not optional. It's foundational. Until you know what you're aiming for, you can't hit it. And if you don't know what to say yes to, you'll say yes to everything. Opportunities, distractions, conversations, projects, drama, all of it. And you'll end up stretched thin, burned out, and wondering why you're busy but not productive. You don't need more time, you need more clarity. The person who wakes up every morning with a clearly defined goal, a spiritual mission, a business objective, a personal transformation, that person will do more in 1 year than a confused person will do in 10. Because every action, every decision, every investment of energy is filtered through one question: does this move me closer to my goal, or does it pull me away? Clarity simplifies everything. It tells you where to go, who to listen to, what to avoid, and what to double down on. You're not chasing everything anymore. You're pursuing purpose. But clarity doesn't come from wishful thinking. It comes from intentional thought. You have to carve out the time to be alone with your thoughts, away from the noise, away from the pressure, away from the opinions of people who don't understand your calling. You've got to sit in the silence and ask the hard questions. What am I here for? What is the one thing I must accomplish in this season of my life? What matters more than anything else? You've got to be honest, not trendy, not popular, not impressive, honest. Because until you're honest, you can't be clear. And until you're clear, you'll keep living below your potential. Clarity demands that you stop lying to yourself. You say you want success, but you're hanging out with people who waste your time. You say you want peace, but you're scrolling through chaos every night before bed. You say you want growth, but you haven't opened a book, attended a seminar, or shut off the TV in weeks. You've got to line up your behavior with your vision. And that only happens when you are brutally clear on what your vision is in the first place. Clarity doesn't eliminate problems, but it does eliminate confusion. You'll still have setbacks. You'll still have resistance, but you won't be disoriented. You won't be shaken by every opinion or every obstacle. Why? Because you know where you're going. You've made up your mind, and that's the difference between the people who wander through life and the people who dominate it. The dominant ones are not always smarter or more talented. They're just more clear. They don't get seduced by every trend, every opportunity, every shiny thing that shows up. They've already decided. So they're not distracted. They're dangerous, laser focused. That's what clarity does. It sharpens you. It disciplines you. It strengthens your yes and empowers your no. You're not available to everything anymore. You're not showing up everywhere anymore. You've stopped explaining yourself to people who don't even belong in your future. You're not moved by applause, and you're not paralyzed by criticism. You're anchored, rooted, grounded. You've got clarity, and that makes you unstoppable. Without clarity, you're not in control of your life. Your circumstances are. Your calendar is controlled by whoever shouts the loudest. Your emotions are controlled by whatever happens in the moment. Your vision is clouded by whatever someone else thinks you should be doing. That's a prison. Clarity is the key that unlocks the door. Clarity gives you freedom. Freedom to focus, freedom to build, freedom to walk away from everything that doesn't align. When you're clear, you stop reacting and start creating. You don't wait for life to happen. You make life happen. You speak what you want, you move in that direction, and you don't get stuck second guessing yourself every 5 minutes. Silence builds strength in a world that idolizes noise. We live in a time where everyone wants to be seen, everyone wants to be heard, everyone is trying to prove something to someone. Social media has become a stage for performance, not purpose. People post every move, every plan, every opinion, trying to convince others of their worth. But while they're busy broadcasting, the truly powerful are busy building. They're not loud. They're not flashy. They're silent, strategic, and strong. Strength doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need to scream for validation. The strongest people are not the ones making the most noise. They're the ones making the most progress. They don't argue with doubters. They don't chase applause. They don't compete with the crowd. They are focused on the mission, moving quietly and building relentlessly. Silence is not the absence of power. It is the restraint of it. When you learn to stay silent in the right moments, you conserve your energy. You stop leaking power through meaningless conversations and wasted arguments. When you're silent, you're not ignoring the world. You're tuning into yourself. You're listening deeper. You're studying patterns. You're reading the room. You're watching who's real and who's just loud. Silence teaches you what noise will never reveal: clarity, discipline, and discernment. The person who can master silence is the person who can master themselves, because silence forces you to face your own thoughts, your own fears, your own motives. It reveals what you're really made of when no one's watching. We've been taught to speak up, to express ourselves, to defend our truth. And yes, there are moments when your voice matters. But if you always need to explain yourself, you haven't built enough. If you constantly need to prove your point, you're playing small. Real strength isn't in proving, it's in producing. Let the results do the talking. Let the transformation speak for itself. You don't have to argue when your life is the evidence. Silence also protects your vision. When you speak too soon, when you expose your plans before they're ready, you open them up to criticism, doubt, and sabotage. Some things need to grow in private. Some things need the shelter of silence before they're strong enough to face the world. Your dreams are seeds, and seeds don't grow in the spotlight. They grow in the soil, in the dark where no one sees. That's where the roots are formed. That's where strength is developed. When you choose silence, you're not being passive, you're being powerful. You're saying, I don't need approval to stay in alignment. You're saying, I trust my process more than I trust public opinion. That's what separates the talkers from the doers. Talkers fill the air with promises. Doors move in silence and deliver outcomes. Silence is your strategy. It's not avoidance, it's advancement. Some people are addicted to reaction. They speak before they think. They post before they plan. They act out of emotion instead of intention. But silence breaks that cycle. It gives you space to respond instead of react, to evaluate instead of explode, to choose wisdom over impulse. When you're silent, you reclaim your power. You own your time, your focus, your energy. You stop letting external chaos dictate your internal peace. Silence also reveals who's really with you, because when you stop talking, some people stop calling. When you stop performing, some people stop applauding. That's fine. Let them go. Silence exposes the shallow and reveals the solid. It's the filter that separates those who love the spotlight from those who love the real you. You don't need a crowd, you need alignment. And sometimes the people who clap the loudest are the ones most afraid of your growth. It's in the silence where vision becomes clear. It's in the silence where strategy is born. It's in the silence where healing begins. You can't hear the whisper of God in the middle of noise. You can't receive divine instruction when your mind is crowded with distractions. So silence becomes sacred. It becomes your training ground. It becomes your preparation space. You stop showing off and start showing up. You stop performing and start producing. You stop talking and start transforming. When you understand the strength of silence, you won't be triggered by criticism. You won't be shaken by rejection. You won't be pressured by timelines or trends. You'll walk in purpose, anchored in identity, fueled by vision. You'll become unshakable, not because you shouted louder, but because you listened deeper. And that depth, that internal strength becomes your foundation. It becomes your advantage, because while others were busy talking, you were busy becoming. Distraction is the enemy of destiny, and most people don't realize they've been living in enemy territory their whole lives. They wonder why they can't stay consistent, why their breakthroughs never seem to last, why they keep getting close to success, but never quite arriving. It's not because they aren't capable. It's not because they don't have potential. It's because they've never learned how to protect their focus from the daily assault of distractions that show up looking like opportunities, people, notifications, and urgency. Distraction doesn't always look like failure. Sometimes it looks like business. Sometimes it looks like being needed. Sometimes it looks like scrolling through your phone, telling yourself you're just taking a break, when in reality, your vision is being stolen moment by things that have no place in your future. There are two kinds of people in this world: those who are driven by destiny and those who are driven by distraction. One wakes up with intentionality, The other wakes up and reacts to whatever comes. One guards their time like gold. The other gives it away to whoever asks. One knows that every yes is a no to something else, while the other says yes to everything and ends up being pulled in 100 different directions. When you don't take control of your focus, distraction will run your life like a thief with keys to your house. And the worst part is you'll think it's normal. You'll think being overwhelmed, overstimulated, and overcommitted is just part of life. But it's not. It's a trap. Distraction doesn't just delay you. It drains you. It takes energy away from what matters and gives it to what doesn't. And then you wonder why you're exhausted but not fulfilled. You're moving all day but making no progress. You're answering messages, responding to emails, dealing with everyone's drama, keeping up with trends, and checking boxes. But your vision is still on hold. That's not productivity. That's misdirection. That's movement without alignment. That's being busy without being effective. There's a cost to every distraction. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't align with your purpose, you're saying no to the thing that does. Every moment spent on the trivial is a moment stolen from the transformational. You can't afford to be casual with your attention. You can't afford to let the world dictate where your energy goes. Destiny requires discipline. And discipline demands that you get ruthless about what gets your time, your focus, and your mind space. If it's not building you, it's breaking you. If it's not moving you forward, it's holding you back. And if it's not part of your assignment, it's part of your distraction. Not all distractions are evil. Some of them are good things that came at the wrong time. Some of them are meaning people who love you but don't understand your calling. Some of them are past versions of you that are comfortable, familiar, and easy, but no longer aligned with the person you're becoming. And that's where discernment comes in. You've got to know what to walk away from, even if it looks harmless. You've got to recognize when something is stealing your momentum, even if it doesn't seem dangerous, because distraction is subtle. It doesn't crash the party with a warning sign. It shows up quietly, fits in perfectly, and starts pulling your focus an inch at a time. One of the greatest lies people believe is that they'll get back on track tomorrow. But distraction loves tomorrow. Distraction loves in delay. It wants you to keep putting off your purpose until you're too tired, too scourged, or too far off course to find your way back. That's why you have to decide daily, not weekly, not monthly, daily, that your focus is not for sale. Your purpose is not up for negotiation. Your attention is not available to just anyone or anything that calls your name. You were born for something specific. You carry something unique. And every second you spend entertaining distractions is a second you're not investing in the calling you were given. Distraction is also comfortable. It feels easier to do what's familiar than to press into what's necessary. It feels easier to binge content than to create your own. It feels easier to scroll than to study, to complain than to commit, to react than to rise. But comfort kills calling. And if you're not willing to sacrifice comfort, you're not ready for purpose. Your destiny is waiting for your full attention, not your divided attention, not your leftover attention, but your focused, intentional, undistracted attention. That's where transformation happens. That's where elevation begins. That's where momentum is born. And until you remove the distractions, you'll keep wondering why your destiny feels so far away, even though it's been within reach all along. Let results speak louder than words, because words are easy and results are undeniable. In a world where everyone has something to say, where opinions flood the airwaves and promises are made in abundance, very few people deliver. Talking is cheap, but results require discipline. Results require sacrifice. Results require you to put your head down and your heart and your pride aside and do the work when no one is clapping, when no one is watching, when no one is validating your grind. That's what separates the real ones from the performers. Performers rehearse their lines, the real ones build their legacy. And legacy doesn't come through language. It comes through labor. People will talk a good game. They'll describe their vision in detail. They'll sell you on their future like it's already here. They'll post about it, hashtag it, share quotes that sound profound. But if you strip away the talk, the feed, the filters, what's left? Because hype doesn't create results. Hustle does. Discipline does. And real impact doesn't need an announcement. It just shows up. It shows up in the fruit, in the outcome, in the transformation. You don't have to convince people when your results speak for themselves. You don't have to explain your worth when your work reveals it. Sometimes silence is your best strategy because your life is the evidence. Let your life do the talking. Let your progress speak in boardrooms, in classrooms, in bank accounts, in healed relationships, in transformed habits. You don't need to post about every step. You don't need to seek approval for every move. Just make the move. Just take the step. Let the people doubt. Let them laugh. Let them question your pace, your path, your process. But don't respond with arguments. Respond with outcomes. Let success become your language. Let transformation become your testimony. When you stop trying to prove and start focusing on producing, everything changes. You conserve energy. You stop chasing opinions. You start protecting your peace. And you begin to walk with a level of confidence that doesn't need applause to feel valuable. Because when you know what you're building, you don't need to shout about it. You just build. You build consistently. You build intentionally. You build through frustration, through failure, through fatigue. And over time, your results become your reputation. Not what you said, not what you promised, not what you posted, what you did, what you delivered, what you developed. There is something powerful about quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need to compete because it's too busy creating, the kind that doesn't need to compare because it knows its own lane. The kind that shows up early, stays late, gets better in the dark, and lets the light shine on the outcome instead of the effort. That kind of confidence can't be faked. It's earned. It's grown through seasons where nobody saw the struggle, but everyone will see the reward. It's built through lonely nights, through consistent mornings, through missed parties and skipped comfort zones. That's the kind of work that builds results. And results don't lie. When you start letting results speak louder than words, you'll notice who stays and who disappears. Because some people were only around for the talk. They liked the idea of who you were becoming, but they didn't want to wait for the process. That's okay, let them go. Focus on the fruit. Focus on what you're growing, not who's watching. When you're really producing, you won't have time to explain. You won't have energy to entertain distractions. You'll be locked in, zoned in, dialed into your mission. Results also create authority. People respect results. They might argue with your methods. They might challenge your message, but they can't deny your results. They can't dismiss fruit. That's why you don't need to defend your destiny. Just walk in it, build it. Show it. Let it speak. A tree doesn't scream to prove it's healthy. It just bears fruit. And people come from miles away to taste the fruit, not to hear the tree talk. If you want to shift atmospheres, if you want to elevate your life, if you want to step into new territory, get addicted to producing, not posting. Get addicted to mastery, not marketing. Let your consistency be louder than your commentary. Let your actions echo long after your words fade. Because words will fade, hype will fade, but fruit remains, results remain, and your destiny isn't built on how well you talk, it's built on how well you execute. Most people don't fail because they lack talent, they fail because they lack consistency. They start strong, full of energy, vision, and excitement. They plan big, they talk big, they dream big, but they fizzle out when the novelty wears off. They lose momentum when results don't come fast enough. They back off when it gets uncomfortable. That's because they were fueled by emotion, not commitment. And emotion is a poor foundation for purpose. Emotion is seasonal, inconsistent, easily influenced by circumstances. But consistency, that's where power lives. That's where growth happens. That's where greatness is born. Not in the moments that feel good, but in the moments where you show up even when you don't feel like it. Consistency doesn't look glamorous. It doesn't get praised or applauded. Nobody celebrates you for doing the same thing day after day, especially when the results aren't visible yet. But that's the testing ground. That's where discipline is forged. That's where habits are shaped. That's where character is built. Anyone can be faithful for a day. But if you want to see transformation, if you want to walk in power, if you want to create something that lasts, you've got to commit to the long haul. You've got to master the mundane. You've got to be willing to be excellent when no one is watching, when no one is cheering, when no one even notices. Consistency is the silent builder. It's the architect of mastery. The results you admire in someone else, their success, their influence, their impact, it wasn't luck. It was consistency. It was daily effort, daily discipline, daily focus. It was choosing to do the small things right over and over again, even when they felt insignificant. Because over time, the insignificant becomes the foundation. The little things become the big things. The slow work becomes the solid work. And you realize that it wasn't one big breakthrough that changed everything. It was 1,000 small decisions stacked together with relentless faith. The problem is most people want microwave success. They want instant elevation. They want to skip the process and show up on the platform. But the process is not optional. It's necessary. And the process requires consistency. You can't build anything great by quitting halfway. You can't see your full potential if you only show up when it's convenient. You've got to keep going when it's boring. You've got to keep building when it feels pointless. You've got to keep speaking the vision when nothing around you looks like it. That's what separates leaders from talkers, builders from dreamers, finishers from starters. Consistency isn't just about effort. It's about alignment. It means your actions match your assignment. It means you're not scattered or distracted, jumping from idea to idea, trying to chase every trend and please every person. It means you've locked in on your purpose and you're willing to do the work that your destiny requires, not the work that looks good, not the work that makes you popular, the work that builds your future. That kind of consistency creates momentum, and momentum is a multiplier. It amplifies your impact. It compounds your efforts. It turns ordinary into extraordinary, not overnight, but over time, people will ask you what your secret is, but it's not a secret. It's discipline. It's showing up on the days you'd rather stay in bed. It's being faithful with the little when you're still believing for the big. It's not needing to feel motivated because you've built a mindset that moves regardless of mood. That's what consistency does. It turns discipline into instinct. It turns focus into lifestyle. It turns goals into results. Not because you did something once, but because you did it again and again and again until it became who you are. Consistency also builds credibility. People trust what they can count on. You don't become trustworthy by talking a good game. You become trustworthy by showing up consistently. You become someone others can rely on, someone whose actions match their words, someone whose presence isn't temporary. That kind of person is rare, and that kind of person becomes invaluable. Because in a world full of noise and false starts, consistency becomes your advantage. It's not loud, but it's powerful. It's not flashy, but it's effective. It doesn't always feel good, but it always produces fruit. When you understand the power of consistency, you stop chasing motivation and start cultivating discipline. You stop needing inspiration to take action. You stop giving up when results are delayed. Because you know who you are, you know what you're building, and you're willing to do what it takes again and again until it manifests. There is a version of you that you haven't met yet, because that version can only be revealed through discipline. Not motivation, not inspiration, not hype, but discipline. The kind of discipline that wakes up before the sun, the kind that sticks to the plan even when emotions say otherwise. The kind of discipline that honors commitments made in clarity even when confusion tries to rewrite the script. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is freedom. Discipline is structure with purpose. It is the consistent execution of decisions made by your higher self, not the excuses of your lower impulses. Most people don't realize they are not fighting lack of potential. They are fighting lack of discipline. Their vision is big, their talent is real, their passion is present. But passion without discipline is just noise. It burns hot for a moment and dies quickly when resistance shows up. You can't live by your feelings and expect to reach your future. Feelings are fragile. They change with the weather. But discipline, that's your anchor. That's your muscle. That's what turns chaos into clarity and potential into performance. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't care what the mood is. It shows up anyway. It trains when it's tired. It studies when it's bored. It builds when it's frustrated. That's the difference maker. Because success doesn't happen when you feel ready. Success happens when you do what's required consistently. Regardless of readiness, there are days when you'll feel like quitting. That's normal. But feelings aren't facts, and facts don't build the future. Decisions do. Discipline is making the decision to keep going not once, but daily, over and over again, without needing applause, without craving recognition, without waiting for perfect conditions. There is power in self-governance. When you master yourself, you stop being a slave to circumstance. You stop being reactive. You stop being controlled by environments, people, moods, or moments. You become steady. You become reliable. And when you become reliable to yourself, the world begins to trust you, not because of what you say, but because of how you live. The disciplined version of you doesn't waste time. It doesn't entertain distractions. It doesn't overcome it or underdeliver. It moves with precision, with integrity, with quiet intensity, and that intensity compounds over time. It builds a life of excellence. People are looking for hacks, for shortcuts, for fast tracks, but you don't need more tricks. You need more training, training your body, training your mouth, training your focus. Because what you don't train, you tolerate, and what you tolerate will eventually dominate. If you tolerate laziness, it becomes your standard. If you tolerate inconsistency, it becomes your identity. If you tolerate excuses, they become your truth. But discipline breaks that cycle. Discipline says, I don't negotiate with weakness. I don't compromise with distractions. I don't participate in self-sabotage. Discipline says, I lead myself even when nobody else does. It's easy to be disciplined when people are watching. It's easy to push when there's pressure, when there's praise, when there's presence. But the real power is in private discipline. It's what you do when no one sees. It's how you move when there's no audience, no consequence, no reward. That's where integrity is formed. That's where habits are locked in. That's where greatness is refined. Because if you can trust yourself in silence, you can lead yourself in storms. Discipline also produces peace. When your life is in order, your mind becomes clear. When you don't have to guess about what you're doing or where you're going, your energy multiplies. Discipline removes the mental clutter. It gives your mind fewer decisions and more direction. It's not restrictive, it's liberating. You no longer live by chaos, by chance, or by emotional roller coasters. You live by alignment. Your actions start matching your assignment. Your daily choices begin building your desired future. Not someday, every day, and you won't always feel like the work is working. You'll question it. You'll wonder if it's worth it. You'll be tempted to relax when no one is watching. But that's when you double down. That's when you go deeper, because discipline doesn't need evidence to continue. Discipline just moves forward, trusting that the fruit will come. And it always does. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it will come, because life honors the disciplined. Life responds to the consistent. Life opens doors for the faithful. There is no destiny without discipline. There is no elevation without execution. You can pray, plan, dream, write vision boards, declare affirmations. But if your discipline doesn't match your desire, you'll stay stuck in cycles instead of stepping into your calling. In a world obsessed with noise, silence is a superpower. Not just the absence of sound, but the presence of control. Silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's not about avoiding confrontation. It's about mastering the inner conversation. Because when you learn to be quiet, you learn to listen, you learn to observe, you learn to move with strategy instead of emotion. And that level of restraint is rare. It's the kind of restraint that separates leaders from followers, warriors from worriers, builders from talkers. People underestimate silence because they confuse it with passivity. But silence in the hands of someone focused as pressure. You don't have to explain yourself to everyone. You don't have to defend every decision, respond to every critic, or react to every voice that challenges your path. Because when you know who you are and you know where you're going, silence becomes your shield. You don't waste energy trying to convince people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't dilute your focus by chasing approval. You protect your power by choosing your words with precision or choosing no words at all. That's the level where peace becomes your posture. You're no longer triggered by noise because you've learned to tune into your own frequency. The most dangerous people in any room aren't the loudest. They're the quiet ones who are watching everything. They're not proving, they're preparing. They're not announcing, they're aligning. They're letting others talk while they gather information, analyze dynamics, recognize opportunities, and prepare to strike when the time is right. There is strategy in stillness. There is strength in being underestimated. There is clarity in waiting for the right moment. Because sometimes the best move you can make is the one no one sees coming, and silence is how you set that up. You don't need to speak to make impact. Some of the most powerful shifts in your life will come through actions, not arguments. Through presence, not persuasion. Let people wonder, let them assume, let them talk. You keep building, you keep sharpening, you keep becoming. Because while they're speaking on your name, you're developing something they can't even comprehend yet. That's why silence is sacred. It creates the environment for transformation. It allows you to break cycles, to build strength, to cultivate depth. You become unshakable not because you shouted louder, but because you stood firmer. Sometimes silence is how you stay focused, because distractions come dressed as conversations, as debates, as unnecessary validation loops. You get pulled into energy that doesn't serve your assignment. You get baited into responding when your response was never required. The question is, are you disciplined enough to stay silent when your ego wants to defend itself? Are you mature enough to let misunderstanding sit in the room without correcting it? Are you secure enough to be misjudged for a season while you build something that will eventually speak louder than any explanation could? Your silence is not your weakness, it's your signal. It tells the world you're not available for nonsense. It tells your future you're making room for it. It tells your soul you're ready to grow beyond external noise. Because silence doesn't mean inactivity. Silence means intention. You're choosing when to speak, how to speak, and why to speak. You're not reactive, you're selective. And in that selection, you find power. The power to hold your peace while the world loses its mind. The power to stay grounded while everything else is shaking. The power to move with clarity, because you're not busy proving yourself. You must protect your mental space the same way you protect your physical space. You wouldn't let just anyone into your home. Don't let just any voice into your mind. Silence is a filter. It blocks out the noise that tries to derail your focus. It keeps you aligned with your vision. It reminds you that not every comment deserves a reply, not every opinion deserves a platform, and not every battle deserves your energy. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to fulfill a purpose. And sometimes that purpose requires separation from distraction, from drama, from the need to be heard by people who aren't assigned to your destiny. There's something powerful about moving in silence and letting your results do the talking, about working in private so your public life carries weight, about developing your next level while others are still discussing your last. The world doesn't need to see your process to respect your outcome. They'll see it when the fruit shows up. And the fruit always shows up when you've been planting in silence, watering in silence, growing in silence. That's the rhythm of transformation. Quiet seasons that lead to undeniable results. So choose your silence like a weapon. Not to hide, but to prepare. Not to retreat, but to refine. Not to escape, but to elevate. Because when the time comes to speak, to act, to lead, your voice will carry weight not because you used it often, but because you used it wisely. There is a version of you waiting on the other side of solitude. Not loneliness, not isolation, but intentional solitude. The space where clarity is born. The space where you stop absorbing noise and start aligning with purpose. Most people avoid solitude because they're afraid of what they'll hear when everything else is quiet. They're addicted to distraction, dependent on the external, desperate for validation. But if you never pull away from the crowd, you'll never hear your own voice. And your voice is the only one that knows your assignment. Your voice is the only one qualified to guide your journey. The deeper you go into yourself, they see the strength of the more powerful you become in the world. This isn't about cutting people off or being antisocial. It's about building inner strength. Because until you learn how to stand alone, you'll never stand strong in front of others. You'll keep bending under pressure, shrinking for approval, compromising for connection. But when you develop the ability to be by yourself, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you become rooted. They see the strength of you don't sway with every opinion. You don't chase every trend. You don't need to be seen, praised, or chose because you've already chosen yourself. And when you've chosen yourself, you can move with confidence. Even in silence, that kind of focus only happens in stillness. And stillness is where transformation begins because you cannot elevate in chaos. You cannot build something powerful while constantly reacting. There comes a time when you've got to retreat, to refocus, to regroup, to refine. The work isn't just what you do out there. The real work is internal. It's removing what no longer belongs. They see the strength of it's identifying what's been slowing you down. It's clarifying what matters and what doesn't. And that clarity won't from the world's volume. It comes from your own voice, your own spirit, your own alignment with something deeper than applause. The greatest breakthroughs don't happen in crowds. They happen in caves. Then when you step away from the noise, when you turn off the notifications, when you choose to listen to something higher than public opinion. In that sacred place, you remember who you are. You remember what you're capable of. You remember the vision that got buried beneath responsibilities, criticism, and distraction. Solitude gives you access to that vision again. It reignites your why. It rebuilds your power. It resets your power. They see the strength of because sometimes you're not burnt out. You're just overexposed to voices that don't align with your assignment. In solitude, you start seeing your life differently. You start seeing that some of the pressure you feel isn't yours to carry. You see that some of the expectations you've been living under were never meant for you. You realize how much of your energy has been spent reacting instead of creating, pleasing instead of producing, explaining instead of evolving. And when you get quiet long enough, the noise inside begins to settle. And that's when your genius shows up. That's when your real strength, your original vision, your creative clarity begins to speak. You become dangerous when you no longer fear silence, because now your moves are driven by intention, not impulse. Now your path is shaped by vision, not validation. Now your power doesn't come from being seen. It comes from being still. You don't need to make announcements because your results will speak. You don't need to chase recognition because your discipline will deliver. The silence has taught you to move with purpose, not performance. They see the strength of and that shift changes everything. You'll start noticing that people who haven't done the inner work will be uncomfortable with your quiet. They'll think something's wrong. They'll try to pull you back into distraction. But don't let them. Not but because you're focused, because you've tasted the peace that comes from clarity, because you know now that focus isn't loud. It's deliberate. It's calm. It's committed. And that commitment to your vision is louder than any speech you could ever give. A solitude gives you the power to pause, and pausing is how you regain control. It's how you stop reacting to life and start directing it. It's how you become the author instead of just the actor. And from that place, you begin to create differently. You show up in conversations differently. You make decisions differently. You respond to criticism differently. Because now you're not operating from survival or fear. You're moving from strategy, from wisdom, from alignment. And people can feel the difference. They may not be able to explain it, but they'll feel the weight every time you enter a room, because you've cultivated something in silence that can't be faked in noise, and you've tasted that alignment. Once you've touched that power, you'll protect it at all costs. Not of arrogance, but out of reverence for the process. Because you understand now that your silence and emptiness it was preparation. It was refinement. It was alignment. It was the place where you found yourself again, free from the need to perform, to prove, to pretend. And now that you've found yourself, you can lead yourself. You can guide yourself. You can build something from a place of wholeness, not